Good morning, St. Lucia. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us live from the studios of the National Television Network, the GIS. I'm Janey Joseph, and once it's that time, it's the morning update with Lisa and Homer. Bonjour, Homer.
Good morning, Lisa. Bonjour, bonjour. It is Thursday, and we are moving steadily towards the end of the week. We've had quite an exciting week on the morning update thus far. Thank you to those of you who continue to join us this and every morning. Those of you watching on channel 122, our Facebook and YouTube channels as well. We appreciate you. It is the 2nd of December, 2021, and December, festive December?
It is festive December, and we started off on yesterday and with the prize giving ceremony for the Best of the Best Lantern competition. So if you missed that, you may want to just go onto our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and look for that. It was a wonderful, wonderful ceremony.
It really was.
Great conversation with the ambassador of Taiwan to St. Lucia, His Excellency Peter Chen, and it was great seeing the winners receive their prizes, especially the special prize that was given to 6-year-old Jolie. So adorable.
Indeed, Lisa. And one of the things that we also heard coming out of yesterday's program from the director of the CDF is that we can expect the lighting of the town, of the city, for the Christmas celebrations and Festival of Lights, which is also very exciting.
Albeit it's going to be done virtually for those of you, because masquerade events, we're not having any of those. We know that we're still being dictated to by COVID-19, but we could take back our lives, Yes, we can take it back. And we just have to do the things that we know will empower us in doing so. We know that we must follow what the protocols, the various measures that are being put in place for our protection and prevention of further spread of COVID-19. And most importantly, we know that the most effective tool right now is vaccination.
That's right.
So avail yourself of that. As always, we tell you here, make sure you have a conversation if you're a medical practitioner. Go to your doctor and discuss it with your doctor. Discuss whether conditions you may have, and find out, the truth about COVID-19 vaccine, and don't necessarily hear it from Jane across the road or decide that Peter told you somebody said something. Yeah, so make sure you get it from credible sources, and sources that have the correct information. I know, Ma.
Very right, Lisa. You put it very well.
Yes, yeah. Power ball are we? No, that's not what it is.
Ensure that you verify credible sources indeed, and you can always head over to the official pages of the government of St. Lucia to ensure that you're getting the correct information. We do try to ensure that we share with you as much as possible the information that is pertinent to you, especially when it comes to COVID-19.
And yesterday, the 1st of December, observed as World AIDS Day. And we know that it is a disease that ravaged the world, while it seems to be under some control right now. And I think everything is being overshadowed by COVID-19. However, it is still very much present with us. And so we hope that you were able to visit the various clinics that popped up yesterday with the Ministry of Health. They did some testing, some counseling was being given, information and so forth. So hope you availed yourself of that. And so that brings us to today, Homer.
That is
and
right.
On the 25th of November, we did inform you that we were beginning the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So today, December 2nd, we're at what, day 8? Day 8.
Day
8. I hope that within those 8 days, you have been able to assess situations around you, assess your own life, see changes you may need to make, because I love to always go to that personal responsibility factor. For those of you who probably need help in controlling various outbursts and anger and situations, that help is available. And to help us understand all of the issues that really surround gender-based violence, we'll talk about resources that are available to give you that help. We have with us the Director of Gender Affairs, and she's Miss Janey Joseph. It's great to see you. When I walked in this morning, Herma, I said, wow, she was so bright looking. Loved the colors. I see that the two of you are more in sync.
Well, I think all three of us are.
The colors there.
You know, we have the little oranges, and then you're playing with the greens. So I think we were on the same wavelength.
Looking very good this morning. So, Janey, thank you so much for accepting the invite, and we're looking forward to this discussion. It's very, very important because I think not only is COVID-19 overshadowing every other thing, but I do believe that within our society, we only perhaps give thought to gender-based violence when a particular incident would spotlight in the media. But it is a very serious problem, is it not?
In fact, it is, and thank you for having me. And in fact, it isn't just a problem when somebody dies. It isn't just a problem when somebody reports a very serious act that is harmful, that is perpetrated against them because of their gender, that we become interested in what this whole thing is that we call gender-based violence. Because of what it really is and how it really continues in the society, it is something that we need to understand and give attention to throughout. Because, we can discuss this a little further as to what really is gender-based violence and, what's the root causes of gender-based violence. But when we understand the root causes of it, we understand why it happens and how it happens, we recognize that this is not just an issue that is affecting some people, but it's a national development issue that affects everybody and has implications for us in very, very profound ways. And when I say us, I mean all of us, as long as we're within the country. And it's not only something that is affecting St. Lucia alone, the entire world, okay?
I know that globally, the international statistics show that 1 in 3 women worldwide are victims of domestic violence because we now have broadened that, so to now call it gender-based violence, so it is within itself the same. But 1 in 3 women worldwide, this is astounding. Do we know closer to us within the Caribbean or even here at home what our statistics show?
Okay, we do not have prevalence data for St. Lucia. However, in the Caribbean, we've conducted prevalence surveys, GBV prevalence surveys in 5 countries. And the data that is emanating from the Caribbean shows that we're even above the world average. Okay, 4 out of 5 women on the average in the 5 Caribbean islands where the prevalence surveys have been conducted have been victims of some form of violence against women, at least one experience of violence in their lifetime after the age of 15, women above the age of 15, 4 out of 5. That is astounding. It means that 80%, right? Not 80%, more than 50% in some places, and in some other places, like about 39 thereabouts % of women indicated that they have had at least one experience of violence perpetrated against them. And we have one country, I think, Guyana, with 55% prevalence rate. You know, this is not the type of data that we are proud of. But what it also points to, Lisa, is that if 4 out of 5 persons, right, have experienced some form of violence in their lifetime, it means then that a lot of women are walking around with wounds and hurts and things that we don't know about, because we get about 230-something cases of sexual violence every year, maybe in the region of about that of reports that are made with reference to domestic violence. So these figures do not add up. They do not tell us that half of our population are experiencing this. So it means that a whole lot of people are not reporting the violence that is committed against them, right? And that says something. It also means that a lot of people are perpetrating violence, because it's not just a handful of busy men that are going around perpetrating the violence. Mm-hmm. If that many women in our society are experiencing violence, it means that we may have just as many men who are perpetrating that violence. And I just wanted to go back on something that you said a little earlier on. Gender-based violence is not only domestic violence, right? So gender-based violence is really an umbrella term, and it involves all harmful acts that are perpetrated just because of your gender. So a person believes that they are able to or should have the right to treat you in a particular way that is not necessarily something that you want, right? You do not necessarily want it, and you don't have that much power in saying no to it or preventing it from happening, because that person is in a more powerful situation than you are, all right? And this is really, you know, what gender-based violence is. So sometimes it occurs in the home. Sometimes it occurs among intimate partners, right? Sometimes it is perpetrated against a woman by her partner. Sometimes it's perpetrated against a man by his partner, right? Who can be of the same sex or who can be of a different sex, right? So it can be perpetrated by somebody in your workplace or somebody that you don't know at all, somebody in the community, all right? And very often, the situations that occur, right, in private settings, they're a lot more common, right? So you have, for instance, in the home and you know, in intimate partner relationships, it's a lot more common. But all the other acts of violence committed against another person, just because of their gender, is also considered to be gender-based violence.
So I mean, for the physical aspect, we can see the scars. You can see the person is bruised. But from what you describe in Janey, it's like on the psychological front, that is gender-based violence as well. Financial control of someone, whether it be within a family, a relationship, that would be considered under the umbrella of gender-based violence?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm very happy that you referred to the financial aspect, because economic abuse is very pervasive, but you don't hear that much about it because of sexual and physical abuse being so much more in your face. But when a man, for instance, I'm using a man again because it's more common that way, withholds financial assistance, you know, from a woman who he has a child, 2 children, 3 children, 5 children with. That is a form of economic abuse. When societies determine that only boys should go to school and girls cannot have access to education, that is a form of economic abuse, because they are removing the woman's power. You know, if she gets an education to earn a salary, to be able to take care of herself, to have some form of economic autonomy or control over her own resources. When we have barriers that are set up or not broken down, right, that prevent women from accessing decent work, that is a form of institutional economic abuse, right? And so these areas with reference to you know, financial, you know, economic abuse, they're not very much spoken of, but you recognize that not only are they affecting the individuals, but they're creating a cycle, a situation that continues to create vulnerability, right? And exposes the persons in the situation to further abuse, other types of abuse. And with reference to the emotional aspects that you spoke to, emotional abuse is one of the most common forms of abuse because it almost always accompanies the other forms of abuse, right? And all forms of abuse have serious mental impacts on the individuals. Not only the person who is abused, but also the abuser. When somebody has the notion that they have control over a human being, another human being, and they act in that manner, they are kind of lying to themselves. And so when all of a sudden they don't have control in a particular situation, it's a crisis for them, right? So you can imagine somebody who is in total control in the house and they have to go into the workplace. To what extent is that individual able to function effectively with his peers at work, right? So the emotional aspect of it, yes, it's abusive. Yes, it has impacts for the one who is being abused, but it also has impacts for one who is the abuser.
Now, just listening to all of what you said, it sounds like gender equality has a huge role to play, or it comes in to the entire sphere of things as well.
Absolutely, and that's a wonderful observation because, you see, sometimes we disconnect, the whole need for this sharing of power, in the conversation with reference to gender-based violence, because people associate gender-based violence with something affecting a certain set of people who are considered to be weak, all right? And that is so not the case. And one of the reasons why it continues is because that nexus or that relationship with gender equality is perhaps not really fully understood. When we look at gender inequality, we're talking about an imbalance of power between the sexes. That's literally what it is. And so if there is that imbalance of power, there is opportunity for abuse of power. So as long as gender inequality exists in the world, we're going to have a really hard time tackling gender-based violence in a serious way. Because as long as there's an imbalance of power, there's opportunity for abuse of power.
Jenny, it's often said, just on that point, Homer, that women have made such strides, and we see more women, certainly in St. Lucia, more women are managers, they are in charge, women are able to, they're economically empowered so they can buy their own homes, get their own vehicles, take care of themselves, their children, and so forth, to the point that you hear it is so prevalent, pervasive in our society that, I don't need a man, I can take care of myself and so forth. So how do we juxtapose that now to what you've just said? Because on the surface, we see the progress of women and we see how they are so empowered within the society. So how does that reconcile with what you've just said?
Okay, so that's a great question, Lisa. When we compare where we are to where we were in the 60s and the 50s, we have made some very huge strides with reference to educational advancement of women. We have made strides with reference to employment of women. What we've found in reviewing, what has actually happened in terms of educational advancement of women, employment of women, and so on, we've noticed that notwithstanding the fact that women are accessing higher education, more women are graduating with better degrees, etc. When we look at the statistics, men generally still have a higher level of employment. That's number one. Number two, the highest levels of decision making are still dominated overwhelmingly by men. Highest levels of decision making. Women have occupied management positions. Management positions are positions of care. They take care of their companies. They take care of their institutions. They take care of government establishments. The men with the qualifications that are similar to the women in managerial positions have sources of income that make them make sometimes 3 times the amount of money that women make. In addition to that, a woman may go to university or obtain a first degree, not perhaps even a master's degree, and return. The men who may have gone to school together with her and did not opt for tertiary education, they learn to trade. When she returns and she has a good job, she has a very good, well-paying job, she can afford her car and her home and so on. This man who did not go to secondary school, or not necessarily secondary school, but tertiary education, is probably making 5 times the amount of money that she makes, even with the big job that she has. So what we've noticed really is that, yes, there have been educational advancements. Have it really redound to the kind of equality that we were hoping that it would? Not really, because you see, men have learned how to be able to not access the rigid educational requirements to be able to earn a living. And more than that, the segregation of employment. Women tend to be associated with the caring roles to the point where, their jobs are around that. And that's not very well paying now, is it? Right? But the men now, they're more interested in the doing, and they're more associated with the engineering and so on, that, and entrepreneurship, that brings in the money. But then somebody said, people might say, okay, well, women are choosing that. Okay, but there's a reason why they're choosing it. Perhaps it's because, that is what is expected for a good girl to do. That is what we've been told we can do, right? And so as long as you have that kind of segregation in employment, as long as you have educational institutions that continue to encourage in one way or the other, directly or indirectly, the segregation in the subjects that they choose, right? Then you will continue to have men who are in a position where they're making more money than women, regardless of how much more educated the women tend to be. In addition to that, and very importantly, the burden of care is still that of the women. You have women who are managers and professionals in their households. And during the COVID pandemic in particular, we noticed that. And the men who maybe do not have jobs that are so demanding, yet still, while she's at home and she has to respond to all of those aspects of her job that are so important, she's still the one who's responsible for cooking for herself, her children, and guess who else, right? And she's still expected to do the cleaning and the cooking, etc. And so something that we probably did not necessarily think about that much, during the pandemic, it became so much in our face, we could not pretend that it did not exist. Almost every, and if somebody knows differently, you could tell me differently, but almost every professional woman that I have spoken to during the pandemic were enormously overwhelmed. They could not understand how on earth it was so difficult for them to be able to function, and then they realized that, so why doesn't he do it? No, he doesn't do it because he's not used to doing it. He's not used to taking care of stuff. He's not used to doing domestic work. And so domestic and care work is largely the responsibility of women. And it is largely unpaid.
And so I know Homer is going to jump in here, but let me just say this then and ask this. Then are we conditioned that way? Because, you know, Homer, and I'm sure the two of us, you would concur with that, because we hear, and Janey spoke about the education and so forth, and perhaps the subject areas and women choosing the certain fields that they enter. But we see it on again, we hear that the courses are available. They do not say women don't apply and that sort of thing. It's open to both genders. And so you can make your choice. So Janey, why aren't the choices being made? Because certainly, you know, I don't want to fault a man for, if he's in the construction business, for example, and he's making more money than me, because let me tell you, that's some hard work. You know, while you as the professional woman, your salary may be guaranteed to come, that construction worker still has to toil more to be able to collect his pay from whomever he did the work from. So he may tell you, well, listen, it's not that easy. It's not a cakewalk. There's just so much involved in it. So the question still is, Janey, what, again, on the surface, we see that the society is making that big push to allow women to have that equality. But why are we still where we are at from all what you were explaining to us?
For the same
Why aren't we
reason,
choosing? Are we conditioned? I think that is the question within there. Are we conditioned like that?
Okay, so what do you mean by conditioned? And because you see, when you explain what you mean by conditioned, you probably will come to the real answer. What do you mean by conditioned?
So why do I not choose to perhaps get into the engineering sphere? Why am I not choosing to get into the science field and where the men seem to be dominating? Why do I not choose that? Why do I want to perhaps, as you say, get into the carer's role than trying to get out and be more into the areas that seem to be more male dominated?
So we are adaptable beings, right? And we learn how to be. We adapt to our environment. We learn on so many levels. We learn because we are intentionally taught, and we learn because it is the way it's always done. All right? And so we also learn by seeing. So if I see on a construction site that there are only men doing the construction work, there are only men in the supervisory role, and the women are holding up the post, I, as a little girl, I see that people like me hold the poles. Nobody has to tell me your responsibility, your role, your place on this, in this scene here, is in holding up the pole. I've seen that. And not only did I see it one place, throughout my life, I've seen it. So by the time I get to school, I already know that that is my place. And then when I see people around me who are teaching me, and almost every one of them is a teacher, and every one of them is a woman, and I'm a girl, I'm like, oh, so that's where I am. You know, and nobody tells me that. So now when I'm asked, what do I want to be, unless I'm a little rebel, I'm not likely to say in the construction area. Somebody has to tell me that it is okay for you to be there. Somebody has to give me opportunities for me to be able to see myself there and for me to desire it even. If I am girly, I'm not going to even want it. Because I don't want to be seen like a man. I don't want to be doing things that men do, because I'm a girly girl. right? So somebody has to open that. In other words, we have to transform the way we do what we do so that the younger ones can start seeing it differently. We have to take away the gender stereotyping in the curriculum. We have to look at our books and ensure that the pictures that the children see of Mary playing in the yard and whoever driving the truck, and they are not continuing to perpetuate the inequality that we know exists in our society. So they can, when they see the book and they see that the doctor is a little drawing of a lady as well, they're seeing on the construction site men and women together, then they're realizing, oh, I can fit there and I can fit here and I can fit over there, right? So we need to get down to those nitty-gritty things intentionally. Because guess what? Over the years, it has been that way so much. This is that's normal. This is what is even right in our minds, okay? And so we have to deliberately ensure that the children see and learn, unintentionally learn, that it's okay for me to be in spaces that my mother may not have been in, but you know, I can be there. I can carry the things. I can do work differently. Just because in construction, the men are carrying 2 heavy buckets and I can see their muscles popping out of there, it doesn't mean that if I have to be carrying buckets, I have to carry it necessarily like that. I can think of a different way to be able to move the load to a different place if I don't have the muscular fortitude to be able to carry the 2 things in my hand like that. You know, and that is the kind of permission, right, that we give ourselves and the little ones coming after us that allows us to be able now to make those choices differently. So yes, we're conditioned to answer your question.
And we can adapt ourselves, most importantly. I like that analogy there. If you're on the construction site, you can think and do it differently.
Ways.
You don't necessarily have to go that route. I'm not so sure, Homer, that when you begin to do it differently, that those who are accustomed to doing it one way will be very yielding to the way that you're doing it different. But that's a whole other conversation. So go ahead, Homer.
You know, just listening to you speak and the points that you've made, Lisa, one of the things that it has me thinking about is how important family, the important role that family has in the entire sphere of maintaining balance. Because when you think of women in the workplace, and you rightfully said, yes, they need to be a professional in the workplace, a working woman, but she needs to also take care of home. That balance is still unfulfilled. So maybe when you're thinking of family, and just thinking in our Caribbean setting, a lot of people you speak to will tell you they came from homes where they knew they were loved, but it wasn't necessarily mentioned. So what role does the family have to play in all of it? And should we be thinking of re-educating our people on the importance of good family life?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's where it really starts off for true. So the society in which we live, it feeds, you know, into our family, and our family feeds into the society. When we start making family life sexy, you know, when we start making it okay for us to love spending time with our family, when we start making masculinity and responsibility look like one and the same thing, you know, then children grow up in a space where not only do they feel loved, but then they feel that they can, right? They feel that they can with so many things. And, you know, interestingly, when children are raised in a family where roles are shared, right, within I'm talking about domestic and care roles, right? They are shared between the mother and the father, or between parents, you know, the adults in the home. When they're raised that way, they start realizing that it's okay for a man to do work in the house, you know, that a care work. It's okay for a man to take care of the little girl, of the house, of cleaning the yard, washing the dishes. There is no shame in that. There is nothing wrong with that, right? So when we share roles in the family, we openly share roles in the family. We don't make it a burden on any one person, only one sex, you know, to have a particular set of rules. The children learn that it is okay to do all different tasks, regardless of whether they're a girl or boy. So when they grow up now, they don't have expectations. The boys don't have expectations of their wives that they are the ones who have to cook for them and have to wash for them, or they have to be the ones who are responsible for taking the children to and from school, right? It's a shared responsibility. So yes, but we must understand that men and women form families, and they would have already been part of the society before they formed the family. So they don't start from scratch in the family. So again, just like I spoke of a little earlier on, the sharing of roles has to be intentional. It has to be deliberate, because it's not going to naturally come from them. Many men, when they start doing domestic work, they feel uncomfortable. They don't even want their friends to see them doing it, right? But when they start doing it and they start enjoying it, they realize, but that's no big deal. Sometimes they do it even faster than the parents, the mother, sorry, the women. They do it faster, they do it more efficiently. They have different techniques that they use, you know. I know of children who say, I love it when my father makes the bakes. It's great, and so there's a bit of honor here for the man, you know, in his bake making, and then he can brag to his friends that, you know, I'm the best bake maker in town. But again, it has to be deliberate. It's not something that's going to just happen naturally. And expect some pushback, especially from your male friends, because it's not usual. But I must say, lately I've been seeing, especially in the younger generation, Lisa, I don't know if you've noticed it, but boys who are so proud to be little daddies. I have some nephews, you know, who are so proud to be little daddies, and they're doing all of the daddy things. It's lovely, it's beautiful, you know, so there's hope. And there is not shame on their part in doing the little daddy things. And when I say the little daddy things, I'm talking about domestic work, care work, relating to the raising of children.
You're so right, Jenny. I feel so good inside. I get that feel-good feeling when I see, you know, driving around and I see the fathers going for their little ones. They prop them up on their shoulders, and, you know, and they're just in a conversation with their children. It's so beautiful. Like we had Jolie's dad who was with her yesterday. It's just so beautiful to see. And, you know, the children now take on a whole different disposition when they're with their father than you see them with their mother. So again, maybe that's a whole other conversation. But it is so important for the men to really recognize that they are so valuable to their children and to the family. They are so valuable. But Jenny, on the aspects of gender-based violence, how do we begin? We've started work on how we dismantle this monster, but it seems to be growing. So, you know, but as a society, and I would think on the sort of governmental level, we can get to that. But let's talk a bit about some of the initiatives that the department would have undertaken to help us come to this awareness and begin to do something, remedy the situation.
The Department of Gender Affairs does more coordination work around ending gender-based violence. So all work with reference to response to gender-based violence is decades down. We've been doing this for a little while, from 1982, when St. Lucia ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. We've been assiduously working to changing the perception of women, to end discrimination against women in law and in practice. So that's a start. In addition to that, there's been political will, again, in the ratification of the Para Convention, which is at the level of the Organization of American States, right? So it's an inter-American convention. This one is more specific to punishing, right? Eradicating, right? And eliminating altogether, all forms of violence against women, specific to violence against women. We are also part of the Fourth World Conference in China. I'm sure you remember all of this hype that was around that in the 90s and so on. When, so we accepted the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action and started ensuring women in development. So we had, for instance, the passing of the Family Court Act, and the passing of the domestic violence legislation. By the way, we've gone through the review of that, and very soon, hopefully, we should be passing the more progressive Domestic Violence Act. So in terms of changing the law so as to recognize that this is a problem and it needs to stop now, St. Lucia has demonstrated the political will to do so. In 2016, St. Lucia went through the development of what we refer to as a plan or partnership for action to end gender-based violence. All of the agencies that were involved in service delivery, right, for all aspects of gender-based violence came together and said that, look, we have to work together, no one agency can do it, and so on. And in 2019, St. Lucia embraced the Essential Services Program for Women and Girls subject to violence. We decided that we were going to self-start it. This is a program that was developed by various agencies of the United Nations to end violence against women, really, because it assisted. What it is a framework that identifies all of the standards, the basic services, and the quality of those services that ought to be, given to or provided for victims of gender-based violence. And it has inbuilt in itself a mechanism that allows for the coordination of all different services that are provided in the health sector, in the social sector, in the policing sector, in the justice sector, and bring it together in a framework that makes it much easier to implement and coordinate within the country. So we accepted to start this on our own. It's a highly funded program through the Spotlight Initiative that you may have heard of. St. Lucia is not a Spotlight country, but we decided to start it. And we developed, we did some assessments. We did an assessment of GBV services in St. Lucia in 2019. We also developed a package of essential services that was specific to St. Lucia. Now, in the assessment, we identified a number of gaps in the services that we offered, and through the essential services package, we decided to ensure that this one identifies specifically what we need to provide. So we try to fill in the gaps as much as possible. So one of those gaps that we had was, again, the coordination of services. So we developed a gender-based violence referral pathway. and that is with technical assistance from UNFPA. We identified all of the service providers in St. Lucia. We mapped them out. What are they providing? What are they not providing? Where are they providing it? When are they providing it? Etc. And so all we are currently doing right now is training all of the service providers in the health sector, in the policing sector, the social sector, the justice sector, to use that referral pathway. So everybody's on the same page. We're all using the survivor-centered approach, right? We're all ensuring that all persons who access services in all of the different sectors that I mentioned there, they are accessing services that are based on the same basic principles, so that you don't go bouncing around. And that happens a lot, because the reality is that victims of gender-based violence require a lot of services, right? So it is necessary to sometimes ask the person to go to another agency, because your agency does not provide all of the services, right, for that individual. But we are ensuring through this process that the victims are not feeling bounced around. Their moving from one agency to another is well coordinated. And all of the agencies are using the same basic approach, right? That returns the power to them. The same power that was stripped from them, returned to them, so by making them the center of the one to decide what their needs are. They're the ones to make their choices, and we're offering the services to them, as many as they need, and allowing them to make their choices within the time that they want to make it, but also empowering them to be in a position now to be able to make those choices. So that's what we've been doing. But quite apart from that, where education is concerned, we are trying to influence other processes, right? For instance, ensuring that there is an analysis of, boys and girls education,
and not simply compare.
Attainment.
Because I know often we compare to say, well, the boys did better in 10 subjects than the girls. So we actually looking at, as you say, the sort of access to education and how they also receive that education. I think that's important.
Yes, delivery.
Yes.
Right. So there is actually a project that the Department of Gender Affairs is undertaking through the UNESCO Participation Program that should be getting underway shortly, that looks at boys and girls underachievement. And so not boys and girls underachievement, but the concept of what is referred to as boys underachievement, and see where exactly is this coming from. Looking at the instructional practices, the assessment practices, and the disciplinary practices at schools, and see to what extent these are gender specific, right? Are we seeing that boys are being treated differently, right? That what is it that is resulting in the results that we're seeing? Are the results really that dramatically different for true? This is even a question, that basic question. To what extent are the results really that dramatically different? Is it that we are now seeing that girls are performing just as well, and in some cases a little better than the boys? Or is it really a huge difference? And if it is a huge difference, what accounts for that? And if it's just a little difference, then what are we all fussing about, right? But we cannot, of course, deny the fact that the majority of people in our prisons are men. We cannot deny the fact that the majority of people who are perpetrators and victims of murder, are men. We cannot turn a blind eye to the fact that the number of people who are aimless and not necessarily finding things to do at a particular age, although they have the skills and opportunities to do so. And you cannot, and then you have to compare what's happening with where education is concerned to that as well. So yes, so all of these other initiatives that we try to influence are also being influenced, yes, for gender equality generally, but also to ensure that we dismantle these things that cause ultimately gender-based violence. In addition to that, for instance, we're trying to mainstream gender in all forms of national development. We're trying to mainstream gender in climate change adaptation, for instance, all of these things that will reduce the likelihood that the vulnerable people the most vulnerable people are not considered in development planning. We're trying to increase economic opportunities for women to access opportunities to grow their little businesses. There's work that is currently being done through the UN Trust Fund for Human Security project that we're doing along with the Ministry of Agriculture to empower women who are in the area of agriculture to be able to develop themselves and the work that they are doing, develop their businesses, increase their own skills, formalize their businesses, empower them to be able to make those types of decisions, make choices with reference to pricing, etc. So that now they are in a place where they have a little more autonomy economically. They are able to take control of their needs so that they are not as vulnerable anymore, not as needy for somebody else's input. So they're not in a less powerful position in a relationship. So all of these things are, strides that are moving towards reducing vulnerability and reducing opportunity for abuse.
Well, I'm so happy. I asked that because quite often, Herma, we hear people say, well, what are they doing? What is the department? So you heard for yourself, Janey Opportunity, and gave us the complete rundown from as early as the 1980s, all of the work that the department has done, which has led us to where we are right now, with the successes that we've had. And of course, some of the plans that you've just outlined, Janey, it gives us the assurance that we are going to be able to hit further milestones along the way. I'll give Homer the opportunity for the final question in our 2 minutes left.
Actions on the institutional level are extremely important, and I'm happy we got to hear all what the department is doing. What can we on an individual level do to assist in that fight, especially during, not only during the 16 days of activism, but throughout as well?
Absolutely, that this is on everybody's responsibility.
Yes.
That couldn't be better said than that. Yes, so we can all play our part. The first thing is that it's not just the department doing all of what I said there. It is St. Lucia doing all of what I said there, right? So this has always been a partnership, and it will always be a partnership. It's necessarily a partnership, right? And a partnership also on an individual level. You need to recognize that it is not okay. Violence against women is not okay. Discrimination in any form or shape is just not okay, right? And call it that. Don't joke about it. A guy, harassing a woman sexually is not a joke. It's wrong because it is a statement that I can do that to you, and there's nothing that you can do about it, right? And so when we call it out and we say it is not okay, from those little things, we are making a statement that we will not be tolerating these things. You can do your little in your little areas. Like, for instance, give yourself the permission as a woman to do things that you've not naturally and traditionally done. As a man, you could give yourself the permission to participate more in care work in the house. You could give yourself the permission to learn, something about self-control. You give yourself permission to learn how you can be a male person who is supporting gender equality. It's not just not hitting your wives. It's ensuring that you understand that they are at the same level as you are in terms of their ability to make decisions for themselves. And when they tell you no, it's okay that they've chosen no, and you don't necessarily have to pressure them into doing it, whether you're married to them or not. And we have to talk about marital rape at some other point in time. But
well, I was about to say that we will have to have you back, Janey, because our time has quickly run out. See how quickly it comes.
It does.
Because I still think we have not discussed the factors of what the differences between the genders and how that can contribute, whether in terms of how women make decisions and so forth and so forth. And these are important discussions to have. And so I'm giving you the standing invitation to return, before the 16 Days of Activism closes. We'll be happy to have you back. But Homer, we have to say goodbye for now, and the time flew by so quickly.
Indeed.
Thank you. We've been speaking there with the Director of Gender Affairs, Ms. Janey Joseph. And Homer will be back another day. Thank you so much. See you next time.